It was a bright summer morning in Hawaii on August 5, 1997. The sky was clear, the winds were soft, and the temperature was warm. Just another beautiful tropical day. A young man named Timothy Anderson was visiting Hawaii and had recently made a new friend, Winton Nicholson, through someone they both knew. Winton was a local and had offered to show Timothy some secret spots that tourists didn't usually know about. One of those places was a sea cave along the coast, hidden and wild, carved into black volcanic rock. From the outside, the sea cave looked like a huge open mouth in the side of the cliff. It was about 15 feet tall at the entrance and had a narrow rocky ledge that you had to walk on to get inside. It was tricky and slippery, but Winton had been there before and felt confident. He led the way while Timothy followed him. As they stepped into the cave, the air turned cooler, giving them a break from the heat outside. The walls of the cave were shaped by lava flows from long ago, with dark layers showing newer volcanic material. But what they didn't notice was that the ocean's behavior was slowly changing. If they had checked the weather report that morning, they would have seen a high surf warning. A storm far away was sending large waves toward the coast. In August, the ocean around Hawaii can change quickly and become dangerous, especially in hidden places like sea caves. But not knowing this, Timothy and Winton kept going deeper inside. Eventually, they reached a place where the cave floor dipped down to a pool of seawater. Gentle waves moved in and out, making the water rise and fall calmly. Winton suggested they take some pictures there. It looked perfect. Timothy moved closer to the edge, just 2 feet above the water, trying to take the best photo of the cave's inside. It seemed safe at that moment, then something strange happened. The usual sound of waves echoing in the cave suddenly became quiet. That sudden silence, which experienced swimmers know as a warning, came just before disaster struck. Without any real time to react, the water in the pool dropped quickly. It was the sign of a huge wave about to crash. Winton managed to shout a warning, but the wave was already on its way. This wave was much bigger than anything they had seen earlier. It smashed into the cave with incredible force, and in seconds, the spot where they had been standing was under 3 feet of rushing water. Both of them were knocked off their feet. Timothy was thrown underwater, completely confused and helpless. The water spun him around, and he slammed his shoulder on a hidden rock. Then his head hit another one. Winton, who had more experience with ocean waves, managed to grab onto a rock sticking out from the wall. As the water pulled back, he saw Timothy being dragged toward the entrance of the cave. Realizing their only chance of survival was to escape quickly, Winton let go of the rock and allowed the water to carry him out too. The wave dragged them both through the cave's mouth and over the sharp volcanic rocks at the entrance. Timothy felt the sharp rocks tear his skin, cutting his arms and legs. But worse was the painful hit to his head again as it slammed into a rock. They were now out of the cave, but in open water far from the beach and being pulled farther away by the strong backcurrent of the wave. Another massive wave was already forming in the distance. Winton called out to Timothy that they needed to get to the shore before the next wave arrived. Timothy was dazed and heard but could sense the danger in Winton's voice. They both began swimming hard toward the shore, but the current was strong and pulling them back. The next wave was now close, rising into a giant wall of water. Winton quickly decided that their best hope was to dive under the wave, and he shouted to Timothy to do the same. Luckily, Timothy understood and followed Winton's lead. They both took a deep breath and dove onto the surface just as the wave rolled above them. Even underwater, the wave tossed them around like toys, but at least they weren't hit directly by its full force. When they came back up for air, they realized they had been pushed closer to land. They were tired and hurting, but they kept swimming. The waves now helped them reach a small strip of black sand and rocks. When their feet finally touched the ground, they felt a deep sense of relief. But that relief didn't last long. They had landed at the base of a steep cliff about 40 feet tall. The strip of land they were standing on was very narrow, only about 10 feet wide. And at high tide, the ocean would cover it completely. They were trapped between the cliff and the dangerous sea. Now, a new danger started to grow: cold. Even though it was Hawaii, they were wet and exposed to strong winds. The sun had moved behind the cliff, and soon it would be dark. Timothy, who had hit his head earlier, was now starting to show signs of shock. His skin turned pale, he was confused, and he started shaking uncontrollably. Winton knew they had to do something. First, he tore pieces of his own shirt to wrap around Timothy's bleeding head. Then he helped Timothy sit with his back against the cliff wall to block the wind. He scooped up whatever dry sand he could find to make a little layer between them and the wet ground, trying to keep Timothy warmer. They waited, hoping someone might come. And then, by pure luck, someone did. A woman hiking along the top of the cliff happened to look down and spotted them. She immediately understood that they were in trouble and called for help. Soon, the sounds of sirens echoed from the road above. The Hawaii Fire Department's cliff rescue team arrived with ropes, harnesses, and medical equipment. The rescue was not easy, but the team was trained for exactly this kind of emergency. They lowered themselves down the cliff using ropes and reached the two men. Timothy, who was now in worse condition, was carefully placed in a special rescue stretcher and lifted up the cliff. Winton, even though hurt and tired, was strong enough to wear a harness and climb with the help from the rescuers. At the top, ambulances were waiting to take them to Kona Community Hospital. At the hospital, Winton was treated for cuts and bruises and was released after a few hours. But he remained worried about Timothy. The doctor said Timothy had a mild concussion but no bleeding in the brain. It was a huge relief for both Winton and Timothy's family. If the woman on the cliff hadn't seen them, or if they had waited for a little longer in that dangerous cave, the story could have ended in tragedy. That day, nature showed just how powerful and unforgiving it can be. And that's all for today's video. If this story moved you or made you think, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more. Got a question or a thought? Drop it in the comments below. We read everyone. Thanks for watching.